So we began with the new Pirush in the Zohar. What's interesting, it's a Pirush Tavki in Pasha Bolok. It's the Zohar Kodesh in Bolok Daf Kuf Tzaddik Gimel Omet Aleph, and we happen to be in Pasha Bolok. So it's interesting how these things manage somehow or another to come together. And the Bia Bezeh we saw was a dover a second pirush in the union of Havai Elokai Ator Kiasisa Fele, teaching the union of Pele Mamish Kemoishu. And we teach Pele Meisius Aleph, and we saw that there was a union of Aleph base that the union of the Aleph, which as we had earlier in the whole Hemshah, is Malamed, or it goes down, and is Aleph, the union of Beit. And then we saw the union of the Tzio of the Aleph, the Rosa Eloah of Adam Kadmoah, which we saw is referring to Chokhmah. And we saw that there's two arms on the middle line, and we saw that they were Chokhmah Bina V'das, they were the union of sort of Chabad. And however, it's the union from how all of them are united in one union, all the three arms, literally, of the Aleph, all united in one. And therefore we saw that the union of the Chesben, Nirmaz, in the Ois Aleph is Echod. And he finishes in the Zohar, V'hainu ki asisa fele. So now we see two inyanim, that on the one hand we remain with the Loshen ki asisa fele, we remain with the union of Pele. On the other hand, we see that Pele is a union of Limud and Hamshocha, Dafki B'derech HaGilui, from Chokhmah into Bina. Either in the first pshat we saw we're going in the other way. We learned how Be'ika, it's referring to Chokhmah Stimua, and we saw that's the Aliyah of Chokhmah to be literally a Kisui le Keser Eloah. And we saw that was the union of the Tzada Elyon Shabamamutza, Chokhmah Stimua, that is Mamish Oile El HaKeser, and becomes, as it were, a Kisui and a union Mamish in Keser. And we saw that was the union from Tainug, Rotzen, Chol that we saw Bezeh. Ve'ilu here, we're talking about the Mile of Chokhmah als Gilui. And we went on to be Mefarish, that immediate union of Chokhmah as a Koyach and as a Sphira is the union of Davke Oyer Pnimi, and therefore Davke Gilui. And the Reishis of Alinyonim, that's what it was Maramas over there, Reishis to Rosa Eloah, or the union of Chokhmah is Alamo Reishis HaGilui, and as we brought from the Zohar, Vayhi Donei Kad Kadmoah. In other words, the original union of Oyer, but Oyer Davke is also Ador Golui. Araya Chokhmah mitad atzmo hi b'chinas Oyer v'Gilui, is on Tov Samach Gimel. Uksi v'Chokhmah techayei. We saw that the union of Chayei is b'Gilui Davke. That's the union of Chokhmah. Inyonei is lahachiyos. And therefore the Chokhmah is the shorish of the whole Chayes of the elements as one on. It all begins with the union of Reishis Chokhmah in Atzilus. Yeah, V'hainu, the Ascholas, Esses Spirit Atzilus, well, that's the shorish of the Chayes of all the elements. Hein mebchinas HaChokhmah, Meneshehi Reishis HaGilui. That's the union of the whole process of Gilui Davke, the revelation beginning to take into account the Makablim, was every Gilui takes into account that there's going to be a receiver of the Gilui. And therefore, the union of Atzilus is Reishis HaGilui, and to be the union of Atzilus, Uli Eish Gilui, so that's the whole union. Who begin the Yishtamidun Bay. Well, that's one of the famous Tamim for the whole creation, as brought down there in the Zohar, Pasha Boy. That brings it down over there that begin the Yishtamidun Bay, that there should be entities in Nivroim, that they should appreciate the Eibush, they should come to know him and have knowledge in him. So what are the media for which the created entities, literally the separate entities, how do they come to a knowledge of the Eibishter? Well, that's through the union of the Esser Sphere. The Esser Sphere is that medium whereby we come to know him, as it were. And that we see that the ratios of that whole process is the ratios of Dvorim Hamagulim, Dvorim She'inyonim Hu, Lahovi Esser Ein Safely, they Yedia Davke in the Nivroim of Biyah. Over Pardes Kosov, Atzilas, that's one on the Lashon of the Pardes, Ki Atzilas, Shmoi Shel Ho'in Seif, Moira Al Atzmusay, K'moish Kosov B'mokim Acher. What here we see in that Lashon of the Pardes, two Kitzoves. On the one hand we say that the Inyan of Atzilas is a shame. There's the one on in the Shem Havaya, which is close in Atzilas, is Nirmas, Chochma Bina, and the Vav Midas and Malchus. There's the one on. Whatever the close in the Inyan of Atzilas is the Esser Sphere, is that their Inyan is Gila into Biyah. But he says over there that the Inyan of Atzilas is Shmoi, where are we? Ashmoi Shala Ein Seif, Moira Al Atzmusay. So Shmoi is indicatory of the Makabel. You're calling yourself a name for the sake of the Makablim, the other entity. Or you say that name is Miyuchat Mit Atzmusay, because it's Moira, the Shem, that's the Inyan of the Shem Havaya. So therefore we see that the Inyan of the Shem Havaya has in itself those two Kitzoves. Mitzad we call it the Shem HaEtzem, the Shem HaMagala Atzmusay Mamish. On the other hand, we say that the Inyan from Havaya, or the Lashon Hisavis, the Lashon Havaya, that the coming into being of Al Inyonim is through the Shem Havaya. Meaning that Mitzad Echad, Bitol, Legamre, Yichud, Mamish Batzmusay, Mitzad Hasheni, Shmoi Shal Ein Seif, Legabi the Makablim, Legabi the Nivroim, the Beilam is Biyah. What is the Yom of that to Parles? On the one hand, Atzilas is for the sake of the Makablim. On the other hand, it's Miyuchat B'Tachlis Boy Yizbora. V'yalkein, as Cholos Atzilas u'Mebchinas HaChochma. And therefore, since the whole Inyan of Atzilas is Gilui to the Olam as Biyah, begin the Ishtamiden, and therefore the beginning of Atzilas is Chochma, Shehu Reishis Gilui, the Inyan from Chochma is the very beginning of this whole process of Gilui to the Makablim. And Mamer Nimtzah, that Chochma, how it is in Atzilas, is Etzem Minyonai Gilui. But that's the whole Tachlis of Olam Atzilas. Ukamoi Kain Gam B'Chinas Chochma Stimor. I my time that we learn in the Inyan of the Mamutza. Here we learned that the Ikar Mamutza was Chochma Stimor. And the Mamutza is for the sake of the Makablim, to be Makasha the Makablim also ultimately, because that's the Inyan of the Mamutza, the Shai to the Makablim and to the Tzad Elyoin. I don't ever say Chochma Stimor, seems to be moved out on Sosum from the Lashon Stimor, as indicated with Stimus Behelem. So that was it that we know. The Amiti Shinin of Gam B'Chinas Chochma Stimor, Hari Mitzad Shehi B'Chinas Chochma, Hari Hi B'Chinas Makoir HaGilui. Or the etzem fact that they call it Chochma, albeit Chochma Stimor, albeit that Chochma is kolul in Keser, in Arich, or the Sokos of Chochma is the Gilui, even how it is in Keser. In other words, that it's the Inyan of the process of Gilui which will eventually lead into Chochma in Atzilas. And as well known, that albeit as a parser between Chochma Stimor and Chochma Atzilas, one is called the Mokeh of the other. Chochma Stimor is called the Mokeh of Chochma HaGluya. It's just that it comes in and even from parser. Like we see by the Adam, the Chochma Stimor is Ker HaMaskil, and the Gilui from the Ker HaMaskil is B'derech Nifla. Even from Helem from the Adam, not even from Ilav or Gilui. Yeah, but even Hamasuda. But nonetheless, it is called a Mokeh to the Inyan from Chochma HaGluya. And therefore said the Rebbe Kunta, he said even Chochmas Timur, yeah, Harei. He said Mitzad Shehi B'chinas Chochma, or that in Chochmas Timur, which is called Chochma, Harei B'chinas Mokeh HaGilui. It's also the Mokeh to the Inyan HaGilui, albeit, even Nifla Mi'itanu. And as one on, but to get to the Nesivas HaChochma, with the alle Inyanim, that they're Shorishes in Chochmas Timur, and they come in and even from hidden not HaChochma Me'ayin Timotzei, as the famous Biur has it in many places. But nonetheless, he said, even in Keser, the Pu'ula and the function of Chochma is to be the beginning of Gilui to the Inyan of Atzilas. Therefore, he's going to bring now the Ramaz. Well, Lochein Be'emes has Cholas Atzilus. Well, we just learned and we just established that Atzilus in Yonah is Gilui to the Olamas, begin the Yishtad Meid and Bay. Yes, Cholas Atzilus Umi Chochmasti more. In other words, Okamesh Kosov, Haramaz Pasha Mer Dat Peiches in the Zohar Kodesh, Dat Peiches. That he writes over there, the Ramaz, that the Hascholas Ha'atzilus, Klolos Inyan Ha'atzilus, is Michochmasti more. In other words, that the actual beginning of Atzilus is in Chochmasti more. And even though Chochmasti more is Chochmasti Ba'arich, it's not Chochma Atzilus, it's not Chochma Ilua of Atzilus, but nonetheless, or the whole Tnua of Chochma being a Tnua from Gilui, therefore, even how it is called in the Inyan of Keser, in Yonah is Gilui for the sake and the purpose that there should be Atzilus. Amamir Nimta, that really Chochmas Timur is the emissary coming into being of that Inyan Agilui. It's what you might call how the Eibishter is Ma'atzil in himself, the Inyan Agilui, in order that should be Anasinus Mokim, albeit B'derech Pelech Kitzasa, B'derech Parsa, V'chulu, but it becomes a Mokia to Atzilus. And that's the word of the Ramaz. V'chein, who he says, Klolos Inyan HaChochma. Now here's an amazing piece. This is one of these Inyanim that you find in this Hemshech, which how do you call it? Even though we're saying here that Chochma is Lashon Aleph, but nonetheless it remains Lashon Pele. V'chein, who says the Rebbe Klolos Inyan HaChochma. Gam b'shor shoy u'makoiroi horishoim ba'atzmas oirain sei. He said, so is the Inyan of Chochma in its essential moker and its first appearance of the whole Inyan of the Musik of Chochma in Atzmas. Now when he says Atzmas oirain sei, then he means Atzmas. He doesn't mean afilu keser. He means Mamish Atzmas. So you might say, well, he says Atzmas Oirain Sefer, not Atzmas Mamish. So he means there a Kolo B'Atzmas. In other words, for all intents and purposes, like we find in Tanya the expression Kula Kamei Kali Chashivei. That's one other when the Alter Rebbe says that, he means there a Kolo Mamish B'Atzmusei. Yeah, the Inyan of Oirain Sefer, he says, even in the very Atzmas himself, there's a mokir and a shurish for Chochma. What is that? Shehu Inyan ma'asher b'yediyas atzmei yoideya chulu. But that's what we find that Lashon in Tanya in two Oifanim. We find that in Geras HaKodesh the Alter Rebbe uses the expression yediyas atzmei yoideya es hatoiro, and then we find that in Shara Yichud V'Emunah and also in other places in the famous Geras chapter 20, we find that he uses the expression that b'yediyas atzmei yoidea es kol hanir, that kol ha'olam is kol haniroi, that the Eibishter Kaviochu, by the fact that he just knows himself, alidei zeh hu yedeh kol hanir haniroi. Like he's married in Perek Zayin over there in Shara Yichud, that's the whole Inyan, and then he uses that to be choilech at the what you might call the so-called whoever they were, whether he means the Talmidei Agro, whoever he means that they were Shogagu, Hashem, Ba'adam, etc., that they misunderstood the Inyan of Hashgacha Pratius, because he says that the etzem inyan that the Eibishter Kaviyachol knows himself is Ali Dezer who Yodes Kol Anivroim, and that's what he brings the Rambam over, that Huve Yediosei Echad Huve Chochmosei. Over the Rambam uses the expression Huve Chochmosei Echad. So here we see that just like over there in Shara Yichud, the Rebbe teaches that is really referring to a form of Yediyah, even though we call it Chochmah, but we mean the Indian of Yediyah. And we're going to see further when I get to the Indian for Chochmah. And what does he mean? The Kaviyachol, the Eibishter, allows himself to know about himself. So ask yourself the Shaila, and Ali Dezer, whom Omer Yeded Kol Anivroim, Akol Yadua, that's the famous Lashon, Galui V'Yadua Be'Yizbora. He knows, but it's all Yadua B'Derech Mamela. And with that, the Alter Rebbe avoids the whole idea of him knowing, because knowing means like two entities that you come to know something. Yeah, but if it's Galui V'Yadua B'Derech, it was always like that from way back. There was never any point where he didn't Kaviyachol know. So here the Shaila is not so much a Shaila, how does he know, how that functions, because that's what he says over there, that's mi ha'inyonim, and that's what the Rambam writes, that ein ha'odem yodea dov hazeh al boiriyoi, ve'ein ha'odem yochel lo da'as dov hazeh, v'chulu, the Rambam is married, that you can't really know exactly how that is. That's not so much the point. The point is that what is the point, as it were, of saying that the Eibishter knows about himself? I mean, he anyway knows anyway. What is the point of saying Shehu Yodea es Atzmusei? If Atzmusei Tzeif is Atzmusei Tzeif, then automatically it knows anyway everything. I mean, the Eibishter being what he is by definition, Atzmusei, automatically everything must be Yadua Etzlo, just Mitzad the Atzmus. So why does he say that the Eibishter Kilu is Yodea Sat Musa? Why does he use that expression? So there was the Rebbe here. The Rebbe here is going to teach that that's Kilu in himself, a Atzilus, as it were, a bringing close or a making of an Indian in himself, that he knows something that B'lavach he anyway knows it. And so the fact that the Eibishter allows himself to, in Atzmusei is Barak, to be aware of something that he's anyway aware of it, in order that eventually there should be able to be entities that they would know him. Entities that they would know him, and therefore inside himself he gave the possibility of knowing him, even though he already knew anyway, and he didn't really need it. And we're going to see that he brings a Rai from earlier in the Hemshech, I want to say a Rai, he brings a Dugma lenient. So let's just learn it b'fnim rather than go into Aran Tzariches. V'chein hu klolos inyan ha-chochma. Now notice he says chochma. In other words, even though we're going to talk about what seems to be a lashon for das, yodea, as that's what we say, we really mean the beginning of an awareness. That's what we mean. And the beginning of awareness is chochma. Because chochma is not seichel. And chochma is not l'mayla legamri miseichel either, as is well known in Perek Yudchet. Because legamri l'mayla miseichel, das ist emunah pshuta, or das ist keser. And mamish seichel goloi is bina. You think, okay, what is chochma? So chochma is what we call yediyah. Chochma is being aware of something. In other words, when you get the first gilui of chochma, you don't mashig anything. Even in the nakudas of chochma, you're not mashig anything. All you get is a tremendous revelation of the intensity and the profundity. The Indian H Achreze in Havana Vasog. Oh, you don't have Havana Vasog. On the other hand, we can't say you don't have anything. All you have is just, Emunah, Pshitas Advekis, Mitzad Emunah, you don't have either. You have an awareness. And that's what we call in Chassidus Yediyah. That's called Yediyah. And it's not Meloshen Das, it's not Meloshen Hasoge. It means you become aware. You are aware of. That's the unit of Yediyah. And the fire, when in Atzila, we want to, or even higher than that, in Chochmas Timor, or even higher than that in this Inyan, we want to be Sheilo. Our form of Yediyah, we say, Antu Chachim v'loi b'chachmi Yediyo. In other words, we're Sheilo, Boy Yisborach, our form of how we take Chachma. How do we take Chachma? But der Yediyah. Therefore the Rosh is Antu Chachim v'loi b'chachmi Yediyo. Because that's the way we understand, or that's the way we appreciate or we gain Chachma. And therefore he says in Atzmusay, it's not your way, but it's the beginning of something which is a sinus mokim to them. And therefore the Alter Rebbe brings in Torah Yodot, in the famous Maimah in Pasha Vayera, he brings it that anti Chacham Haloi B'Chachma Yediyo is a mokim v'shoyrus, that eventually there is Yediya by the Nivroim and Biyah, even though it's a Loi B'Chachma Yediya, is a siman that it's made in such a way that it's only a shlila of what they will eventually get. Oh, but why did he do it? Eventually they should be able to get just we say the way it is, ben time, it's like ataloicho afilu b'di yediyah hazu lakacht et ze, avol sokos of tikach et ze, and v'eik tikach et ze, but even shal yediyah.
The madrigas that they're talking about here is also the musag of almost the kladarut.
At Masai?
Almost the kladarut. Yesh the
almost
the kladarut.
Elinot. What does he say?
Close. Almost the close.
Almost ain't so.
Almost yes. Asilas that we talking about. That's asiyah the close. Lachon. So are these madrigas like talking about asilas the close, breed the close, asiyah the close?
Yeah.
Higher than
yeah, there's a Nachon here. It's not any way against what we're saying. What we can say is that Antu Chachma Loi B'Chachma Yediyah exists on different levels. But what we're saying is that wherever it's L'mayla from Yediyah Sanivroim, then we say Antu Chachma Loi B'Chachma Yediyah. The point we're trying to make here is that we use the word Yediyah because we're only being Sheilol the union of Yediyah Saniroim b'madrega ahi. Avosokos, the way the Chokmah functions is what we call Yediyah. Therefore he's Sheilol with the word Loi b'Chokmah Yediyah. So I mean you can talk about a Be'ez madrega shataroite. You understand? You can talk about it in how does L'mayla me'atzilas, how does in Akko. You face what? You follow? Here we're talking about the Chiddush that we're making here is we're talking it in Atzmusay Yisborach. And here we mean mamish kolu bi'atzmusay. So Rebbe said the Rebbe ta'gili ha'yediyah gam b'shor she'makir harim b'atzmusay say masha b'yediyah atzmi yoideya, and therefore the Rebbe just says chulu because we use that in different l'shoynois. Ha'rezev b'chidas gilui le'atzmusay al koponim. That's a gilui le'gabi the atzmus al koponim. Because the very fact that we say there should be yediyah atzmi yoideya, even though we don't mean Yodea in the normal way, because we say Yodea betad Yodea Satzmusay, but nonetheless he said the fact that you describe that means that it's already a Gilui Le'atzmei. The Gilui HaYodea Le'atzmusay, Hu B'chtei Li'yosei Yedui B'oilim. And here we see an amazing principle that all the inyonim, what Kaviyachal the Eivish made, Mamish Mi Atzmusay Kipshutei. All the nuances and all the inyonim which occur, which imply that in some way the Eivish is aware, or he knows what's going to be, or he knows how it's going to be. Okay, it's all of those inyonim are all for the sake of something. No, they're all for the sake of a movement out of himself. Well, he doesn't need that cloud. What is the ultimate purpose? The ultimate purpose is to reach the Nevroim. We'll soon see about that when I get to another famous Lashon which occurs. The Gilui HaYediyah Le'atzmusay is in order that there should be Yediyah Ba'elamas. The Harei, L'choira Eino Muvan, Man Ish Chadish B'Yediyah Zu B'Atzmusay, Shaharei Le'atzmusay Yodea Gam Kodim Sheret LaYediyah HaKlula B'Atzmusay. I mean, mitzad etzim, like we pointed out a minute ago, mitzad Shleimus HaAtzmus, mitzad Kol musogim that we can possibly apply to the atzmas, v'derech hafroa haki atzuma, he anyway knows. He doesn't have to know You follow? Anyway, it's all just automatically what you might call kalut, v'chalut, b'toich ha'atzmus, everything that anyway is there and is ever going to be. Emma follows. He said, why did he need to, as it were, say who you dare be atzmusay? So the Rebbe said that's in order to produce, achahinyan, the koidim shenetz la'yediyah, ha'yediyah beherem be'atzmusay. Nothing, no other entity or no other being could ever know him. In other words, he would only know him himself. Over, he said, what he's done is he's v'netzla chokhmah. Now he calls it chokhmah, not yediyah. He calls it chokhmah. B'chinas ha'iskalus b'atzmusay liyes ha'yediyah begiloi b'atzmusay al choponim b'gdei shetiyeh atzilas b'chinas Chochma, b'chinas ha'yediyah b'neshamas uba oilamaz. Vayim Mashiach is boileo Perek Mem Zayin. Now, if you look up over there in Perek Mem Zayin, that's not a part of them, so we didn't actually learn in these classes. But if you look up over there, then the Rebbe brings Bein Hadvarim. He brings the famous remark of the Rishonim. And I think it's also the Pardes and the other great Rishonim HaMekubalim. They say that everything that was Ne'atzal was Ne'atzal L'Tzorech HaOlamas. Kommen Sie again with the Kashia, but the Siddur HaTaich in Gedolei HaMekubalim, it's in the, I think it's Efshe status in the Zohar Kodesh Mashu Me'ein there. We say, we state that that you should ask for the first days, and that's referring to midas. In midas there can be a from shaila v'yediyah. But in moichin, it's not shaila the whole from l'mayla mi'amidas lo yikaima lo shaila. It's not shaila. You can't ask anything. Can't be choicha v'deirish anything. From that they reach the conclusion that the whole inyan from Tzorech HaOlamas, the whole inyan of Gilui L'Tzorech HaOlamas is from Midas Elamata. But the inyan from the Moichin are not charged to the inyan from Olamas, and Kavioho, they are only Le'atzmus the inyan from the Moichin. And they bring a dogma from a mensch. Lamata, the inyan from Moichin is mavdil him from other people. The inyan from Moichin is only A'isaskis B'toich Atzmai. Can you do it? More force of the inyan. Coming again with the Kasha, the Rebbe over there, he brings, as a state in the Kisvei Arizal, the Arizal says that everything is L'Tzorech HaOlamas. Hakol, L'Tzorech HaOlamas. Afilu Chabad, Sh'Lamayla Mi'amidas, he said it's L'Tzorech HaOlamas. I would just brought from the other great Rishonim, and from the Zohar Kodesh, it's not child. The whole inyan from the L'Lamayla Mi'amidas is like Kaimala Shaila, and therefore there's a whole beer in Sifrei HaKabbalah that the inyan from Chabad is only L'Tzorech Atzmai, and you can imagine him having Chabad even without the inyan from Olamas. Well, this is an interesting one. What would he be doing with Chochmah Bina if he wasn't going to make Olamas? It comes again the Rizal, and the Rizal and Megala a whole new in, and everybody's right. That's very common in a way. Chabad understands the Rizal that he is Kilo Miyashiv, what appear to be all sorts of Inyonim, Loi, Muvonim, and such stiras in other sources in the Kabbalah. The Rizal is Miyashiv. And what was the issue? And they say that, hey, Nemes, the Inyan from the Moichin, Alagamri, Lamayla Me'elamas, and since they're Lamayla Me'elamas and they're not charged to the Elamas, V'chuli, doesn't mean that Mailas Amoy. It's a Minyonom, they're too high for the Elamas. To be the too high to be mashpia, and therefore you can't ask her. You can't really be doidish and like you can in the middle. Obali Idok when they read, I said that that's also the Tzorech HaOlamas who come to them. Come on, who's the vessel today? He will matter. Who's the vessel today? Was it a beer? So the Rebbe didn't be what he says here. The Rebbe says an amazing thing that when we say that a mensch in Pnimis HaMoichin, he doesn't have any shaykhs to the Zulas. He said the two same things are true. On the one hand, when you're misasik in Einin, Omuk B'teich HaMoichin, you're not shaykh to anybody. Yeah? You can't talk to anybody, and it's not shaykh that anybody should be masik what you're being masik in the Moichin. However, so the Rebbe dort in the Iron Base, the Rebbe said that if you don't have this moichin in yourself, then it'll never, what you are masi will never reach another person. Absolutely no way it'll ever reach another person. Because you never brought it into any form of gila etel atzmocha. To a certain extent, you never really know it yourself either. To use the expression. He said, why is it that you go to the trouble and your mind trains you that you do take things from Chochmas Timor, from the Koach HaMaskil into the Askolas HaYediyah, and you do have a Yediyah, Mudul Mikol Sharei B'nei Adam. He said, but that's all in order that eventually you should be able to give over to the Zula. He said, Tachlis Kol HaInyonim Adiyorim should be Megalit to the Zulas. Mitalmida Yezim Muzom Talmidim, and so the whole Inyan is to be Megala. If that didn't occur, but Moichoi, it wouldn't be shy to whole Inyan these galas to the Zulas. Even though at that particular moment the Zulas may not be able to actually go into your Haskalah, but because I know exactly what you're being masked right now in the Pnimis Chochma Shel Hamayla Mi'anakuda. Ich weiß pinkt wo du hast den Kopf. He doesn't know. Weiß nicht. But eventually he's gonna know. Through the fact that you bring it down. Do a gewisse Seder, and it will come out. But Luli Indians there, nobody would ever know. Kind of it going into this person. And it's a fellow gesagt. So the Rebbe says the same thing that Lamaila, the Eibishter, is kind of nechuli. The Eibishter not to give anybody anything. Ulo, there's a famous expression from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Pnimius Atik doesn't know anybody anything. That's Pnimius Atik. No, the whole Kavona Elyoina, the whole Ganzene, ultimate purpose that the Eibishter had in himself, B'shvil Ma, Einon Yoidim, that's what the Alter Rebbe said, of a Taivas, Kasha, we can't really know who is. The Eibishter wants that there should be this Nasina Ella, whoever they're going to be later on, Oilam is Biyah, that Madrega, what and when. I mean, the Makabli was disregarded. The whole reason why the Eibishter made this Inyan in himself, that he knows about himself. So he said the very fact that you use such a lashon and you say b'yediyas atzmuzis b'yediyah is called anivorim, but that you're saying that he allowed there to come inside himself something which legabi him is absolutely superfluous. Atzmuzi hu yediyah v'lavoyet calls it. So even that's legamri mufrach that at any point in history we should ever understand how he knows. What did he do? He allowed that to appear in such a way that eventually, after a whole series of leaders, there should be a Yediyah in the Elam should be able to come to know him. Begin the Yishtan Midun Bay, it goes up into a very high clang. It goes into a high movement that Kaviyach, the Eibishter, made within himself as a movement, and that's called Chochmah. Mirut Tason Chochmah. And when Chochmah comes down, it's the beginning of every Inyan of making you a Mechut. Chochmah is for you. Chochmah is already, I feel Chochmah Stimor. Ultimately speaking for you. I feel that Lavusha Eloah, we saw that, how do we call it over there in the previous, but how if Kisuya Eloah, that's also for you. Also Fadir, but that eventually there should be the Makabo, and if inside himself the Eibishter Kilu allowed himself to know when he didn't really need that cloud, it's absolutely not Chaya, and Afu became it's there. Now Mamira said that that's why it is that when you know, and you begin to know, you also don't know, as the old saying has it, nish does and nish does. On the one hand, you don't know how Bina and Midas and all that take it. On the other hand, you don't really know, Vishleimus Kola Atzmas Kamoishahu. You get this tremendous connection. You get those and you begin to struggle with it. Kilu, that something very high and Atzmis Dik has allowed you to move in here. In other words, that the Etzim Nefesh is somehow giving you down a hand. It's almost sort of put down and drawn you into the picture. And that's what we call Yediyah. Das heißt Yediyah. Amir said that. Das is the shurish of Mochim of why he got Chokhmah in Atzilus. That deep inside himself, the Eibishter Kaviyachal made a movement. He allowed that eventually you would think to say when you have inside your brain a knowledge, nobody can ever know that. But if you wouldn't have had that, there'll never be a getting to the Zulas. And why do you have that? V'sof kosof. He wants you to get to the Zulah. And remember, the other morning I was looking at Perek Lamed Aleph in Tana, right at the end of Perek Lamed Aleph, the Alter Rebbe, he brings the whole thing about Perek Lamed Aleph, where you have to run away from your Nefesh HaGuf, your Nefesh HaBam, your Tshuva, run up in your Nefesh HaLakis, be mistabak, forget the whole Guf, Nivze, Meshuketz, and all, run away, Tias Mitzrayim, Ki Borach HaAm, and again to do it. And then he says, aber Kadesh Simcha Zu Tiyeh V'Teisa V'Seira V'Teisa V'Simcha. Yeah, and that's it. It means the whole thing. Why did the Neshama come down on Eloi Asisi? It touched me. What did I come down here for? What's it? If I'm supposed to run away from it all, what am I doing here? What's my Nefesh HaLakis doing inside something that we really recommend that you get away from here? Yeah, out here, Paul. Yeah. All of a sudden, he says the whole in and the Nefesh HaLakis came down in order to be mild and the Guf and the Nefesh HaBam. He said, that's all. Notice that he puts in brackets, Okamoish is Boal Akamon, Eiksha Dova Zehu, Tachlis, Brias Hoelam. That whole thing is Tachlis, Brias Hoelam. He franked by dear, you were holding in the 31st parak, yeah, right near the end, and all of a sudden he says, oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you a bit later in this book, what is all the Tachlis of the Brias Hoelam? It's Simon that Ad Koyad Lo Dibano was the Tachlis Brias Hoelam. Was it the ganze Tachlis, the ganze Bria? What Lord Rulecha? But everything we've done is only for your benefit. It's all for you. We're telling you how to arrange yourself in such a way to know all these amazing, to know all about your koifas you never did, and all about your neshama, and about pnimis and neshama, and about Mesilas Nefesh, and about throwing the Eibishter. Phrase nearest was. What not? What did he not tell us? I said, well, by the way, I'm going to tell you another few chapters yet. This is what I just mentioned. That's going to be the Tachlis of the whole Bria. What have we been doing up till now? And where does he say that? Where does he say that's going to be the Tachlis of Bria? Where he says that you all came down and all to elevate your Nefesh. That's all he came down. Elevate your Guf and your Nefesh. And that's all. Really, go tell him it's not going to. You'll find her. Take out a sledgehammer and chase her. But he said the whole reason he came down is just to be Mali and That's the whole reason he came down, to be Mali and Nefesh HaBam. I insult was I came down for the sake of some Meshugan to horror. Nefesh HaBam is a goof. That's why I came down. If I'm says the Alter Rebbe later on, you're going to find out even more than that. That's the Tachlis Kol HaBriya. Bishvil Zeh. The whole creation that you should do a bit of work. You shouldn't just sit in Gan Eden. You should come down and make Mivtoy. Geir Oiz and Avit with the Guf and the Nefesh HaBam years. Bishvil Zeh Tayiran. It's the same thing here. The Eibishter's got everything. The Eibishter Kaviyachal begins the whole process of inside himself. He makes something that's only really for the ultimate sake of the Royim, that they should come to know him. And Melchum said inside the Eibishter, but racist kolain on him is Mivtoim. That the Eibishter makes a idea that ultimately speaking somebody else should know. And who is it? This little weenie Odom guy that way down there under Atzilus and under everything. He drays around and Meshugan Avelt. That's what the whole thing was for. That was the whole mass. Bishvil Zeh. Amamela said the Rebbe, that was the whole thing. It said a chokm oven him to lefizeh. A chokm is gilui. That the Eibishter made gilui. But really, what you make gilui, you're talking about a makabel. Because gilui means revelation. Revelation means to whom? To somebody. Amamela chokma imkain is yediyah. Yediyah is gilui. Mishumah gilui, to eventually reach another entity and teach him. And that's the Indian from Aleph Bina. Aleph base is Aleph Bina. You got to teach. If you got Chokmah, you got to teach Bina. If you got Bina, you got to teach Midah. If you got Midah, you got to stray into Malchus. If you got Malchus, you got to go running out into Kaviochel, didn't go for something and change the world. Come on, not every moment of your life, but you can do it. Edif, says the Rebbe, Harei. Now, Harei is, look, you see, the Prince of Chochmah, Prince of Gilui. In other words, this whole piece, it is to show the Chochmah is Gilui. The Prince Keser, you say Keser ain't a Roi Chaya. Oh, your Keser ain't a Roi Chaya. He said, who Prince Helem? Thou Shem Zenema, Choyshech. Nikram, sorry. Choyshech, Liyoyze Prince Helem. Aber Chochmah Prince Oye V'Gilui. He said, V'yesh loima, the Keser v'Chochmah zeu atshilas, b'chinas choshech v'oye. Well, the mamish apelle. What have we done here? We've taken Keser, and we've put Keser Goren and Psach. How do you call it? Into what you might almost call a rather unhonorable show. And we said, oh, Keser is your old friend Choshech. And we're going to say that it's a bria mamish b'fnei atzma. It's a inyan, and the inyan from Chochmah is a. Anyway, you want to touch, and you want to persuade me that a Keser is not oil or what? What on earth? Yeah, what do you mean? Yeah. If you're talking, it depends which way you're talking. If you're talking, mitzad, madregas in oil, and you're starting up very high, and you go and talk about madregas in oil. Then maybe you can taina that purely in the etzem musig of oil, then Keser is a higher, and Chochmah is not such a higher. Yeah, the father's brought down in the Arizal. It says that how do you call it? Shoerin seif meir bekiruv makim bekeser b'Chochmah. We see there's a certain unification or a certain equalification in the two. Why do we say the Keser is the independent equation? Because if you're talking now about the ultimate titles, and your whole reckoning now is how things happen inside Elokus b'day to go down, then the way that reckoning looks at Keser, it only sees Choshech. Well, that reckoning sees that Keser is too high for all that. And Keser is a stage where that's not happening yet. Keser is a level where the Makablim are not being Makabel anything yet. You're doing that for sake ultimately of reaching the Makablim, but they're not actually being Nenem Mizeh Klum, Bentai. Therefore we call Keser the Inyan from Choshech. And it's like it's brought down in the famous lesson at Likutei Tikkunei Zohar. Afu gav the Keser Elyon, he oer tzach, or oer metzuk tzach. Ucham hu gabi ilasa, the famous lesson is brought down almost in all the Ram Sheikh, in one place or another, that even though Keser Elyon is a oer tzach, it's a tremendously delicate light, and it's a oer metzuk tzach. It's even in that gufa, light shibah, it's like oer shibah, very intensive. Inyan from oyer, uchamu gabi ilasa ilay. That gabi higher and gabi the eibishter mamish, it's ucham. So, but that's another type. That's not the types we're using here. Or we see the Keser is what you might say. Keser loses on both directions. Because if you take mamish atzmas hamayitzil, mamish atzmas ain't say v'ekshu l'mayla mikol ha'giluim, then Keser. Is only, even though it's a big oil, like Gabi Him, that's a garnished. This is a Inyan from Ucham. And they call it darkness, brownness. The word Ucham in Aramic means like brown or blackish. And like Gabi Davish, this is mamish, a hell of a hester. Also, if you're talking mitzad the Inyan or the Makablim, and what is the emes hakavana, like we're talking here, then Keser is too high. Keser is still mudul mikol giluim. It's mudul mikol saida, and therefore the gabi the amitis Makablim it is a Inyan from Choshech, and therefore they're not able to be. They're not able to come in there with their yediyah, and therefore there's no such solution. Antu Keser v'loy beKeser yediyah ain't no akazeh. Antu Chochmah Chachim v'loy beChochmah. And we're shoyl the Inyan from Chochmah the yediyah. Oba ultimately there is a Inyan from yediyah, and forget Chochmah is a Inyan from yediyah. Mashiach Keser legabi all the Makablim. Keser being too high is called Choshech. And therefore that's what we say in Yetzer Hara, Vayirei Choishet. It's one on the famous pier in the city. When you touch the Tefillin Shaliad, you say Yetzer Hara, Vayirei Choishet. That's Olam HaBriya and that's Olam HaYitzir. Olam HaBriya is, why do we call Olam HaBriya Choishet? Well, that's one of the tamim. It's too high for the makabel. If we bow, there's another beer. And the first said that the inyan van Chesed is not Yediyah, and therefore it's not Gilui. And even more than that, he said it's the inyan van Atzilus Choishet v'Oyer. In other words, when the Eibusher was Matzil, he was Matzil Choishet, and he bought the inyan from Choishet, he was Matzil the inyan from Chesed. Excuse me, my
this Atzilus, is this Olam Atzilus talking about?
It's, I saw a most amazing thing yesterday morning. Well, this morning I can't remember. In the mikveh, I saw a very choshev looking guy. That he took some sikha. He was getting dressed. He's surrounded by people, either half legamri or half chesed was. And he took the sikha, and instead of saying to the guy, "Listen, call me in another 5 minutes. I'll be outside the door." He stood in this long, he was looking up at the sky and talking away. So I thought to myself, well, that's really quite comical, Even if it's something very important, I said, just call me another 3 minutes, I'll be outside the door, and I'll go out in the street, or hot outside, I'll talk. All of a sudden, he fishes around, he didn't have his trousers, he fished around in the trousers, and he produces another one. And here he is talking, and he's talking this one, and in the meantime he's looking at this one. In the mikveh. That's it, he comes in Dayan Beit, and we're talking about Choishet V'Oyer. If Amela Kumtais, you're worried about the word Atzilus. We're talking about Chesed. What he means is that he doesn't mean Olam Atzilus. He means he brought it about there. He made it appear in that way. You follow? So he made Chesed appear in such a way that it's Choishet. And therefore, Kumtais that the Eibishter made a Choishet, which is really Oyer, but it's Choishet. Why? Because the ultimate purpose is the Makablim. Elegavi the Makablim, this is Choishet. And Adarabah, does it the Pshat, Yetzer Hara, Vayirei Choishet. So I felt to show, why would the Eibishter create a negative thing? Choishet, not a Geshmak Hazak. Why would he create? No, he said Choishet is part of the whole system. Yetzer Hara, Vayirei Choishet. And what does he want to teach you about the Eibishter? That Kesed, with all its mile, is not Gilui. And Chochmah is Gilui. And in them prat, Chochmah is much more the ultimate purpose of it than Kesed. That's all he's trying to teach you, the Eibishter. And therefore, he said, "Ubriya b'fnei atzmo." So ukidua shachoishach einarach heder oyer. You can't tell me that choishach is just not oyer. Ki im hu briya b'fnei atzmo. Ulamayla min oyer. It's even higher than the im of an oyer. Okay, shekazu Yetzer Hara uvoirei choishach. And it's one under the deal. Voirei means yesh mi ayin. In other words, the choishach came from a much higher inyan. It came from the ultimate koyach of the atmos. L'hamtzi yesh mina ayin. Yetzer means that once you already got the yesh, you shape it further. Emel himself, he said that oyer zong yetzira v'yilu choishach is the etzemina van bria yesh mina ayin. So he said there's a mile in the inyan van choishach. After Pikain, it's choishach. It's not oyer. It's not gilui legabi the makablim. Therefore, it's called choishach. And one minute nimtzalef he said that not that choishach is a negative thing. Not the choishach, and therefore he shoyl the inyan, because berega what you say that choishach is heder ha'oyer, then you has a word being poigim in the inyan from choishach. And you say, listen, we got oyer. If you want to just sort of be not oyer and you want to be the opposite of oyer, then you're choishach. That's that's a moral pagia in the inyan from choishach. Or berega what you say, no, choishach is a briya b'fnei atzmai. Choishach is a inyan what the Eibishter has got in that. And the Hainu, he wants it to be a Zayin, which is higher than the Makablim. And he calls that the inyan van Choshech. Aber יש בזה שני עניינים. א', that's a inyan van Choshech, too high for the Makabim, a very amazing high inyan, and that's a Choshech. Aber sof kol sof, you put on tefillin and you say Yetzereru v'yirei Choshech, and that sticks out on your cup and it's makiv. You come over and so meaning that right now for you that's a Choshech, aber sof kol sof you're going to get it that boy. You'll eventually make that Choshech also oil. That'll eventually become way of Adir. But if it was just head or a header can't become a do-it. And so when does that happen? Shabbos. Shabbos, the Eibusha waits until Shabbos, and then that machiv that was in the tefillin goes down into the Pnimi. That machiv becomes a Pnimi on Shabbos, and what happens the next Sunday? A much bigger machiv is an Imchach. Kakatu. Come to it that every week you put on a new pair of tefillin. Maybe some people manage to do that. I don't know. You have to be very rich. Wouldn't you have been here? Is it you put on? Eh? Right. You were told you become Takanosha. You become new to it. Choshech, and a touch Choshech is a brio, and it's a new inyan, and it's only Choshech like I'll be you, because you're eating gilo, you're in as gilo, you're a makabel, you have to have gilo. Or eventually you get to that, because you put on 2 pairs of, I mean, when I say 2 pairs of tefillin, you can put on 4 if you want, but you put on 2 tefillin each time round, יש לומר דבשר שון זהו בחינת הכסף והחוכמה שהוא אין חושך ואור חוימר וצורה or even more. He said, what is the meaning of choimer? Choimer is the mitzvah a goof, as it were. The emes a kli is the meaning of choimer, and tzura is the neshama. So he said, ultimately speaking, like we said, where do you get the meaning from bria? Bria, emes the meaning from choimer, which is the meaning from kli. Where does that come from? From bria yesh me, yesh me ayin. He said, you don't play down that choshech. It's a very, very high inyan, and it's the ultimate tachlis. It's the inyan from the choimer, and the inyan from it's not oil. It's not oil. And what is the inyan from oil? This is tzura. That's what shapes everything. What makes everything have its right proportion, to use the English expression, its right shape, is the inyan from oil. What is lichtigkeit? Then there's proper proportion. Choimer, keli is a big thing. What he's about to say, if you chase after the keli, then you fall into gashmias and chumiyas. Yeah. And where there's no lichtigkeit, it can be as high as you like. There's got to be lichtigkeit. For the nevroim, there has to be lichtigkeit. So what should you be saying? Well, we want lichtigkeit now. So, I don't know if there's sugar and choishe. המאמר איזה חויזה וחוימה בצורה וכמוי כן הוא בעבודה הביטל שמבחינת הכסר הוא ביטל של המייל מתעבודה לגמרי. There's a ביטל כאילו mentions בחוישך. He doesn't really know what the heck. All he knows is he's going to give himself away, and he does it any יודע משום דבר. וכמוי ברוסה דליבה שהוא מבחינת רוצן Posher. Now when he says Rusha Deliba, it's one on. In Rusha Deliba itself there are 2 different levels. And therefore in Tanya there ought to be in a couple of places in Chelik Rishon he mentions Rusha Deliba. There he means that there's a certain shaykhs to din of an askola v'asoga is bonimus. Here he means Rusha Deliba in the sense of the etzem rotzen poshut, and therefore he teaches rotzen poshut. The etzem amitius inyan of the etzem and neshama going up into Elikus. He says, being an emunah peshuta. Peshuta means no tziyah, no yediyah, no nothing, just absolute given awayness, absolute devotedness to Elikus. Va'abitl shemetada chokhmah, this is mamish, I tell you, va'abitl shemetada chokhmah has a bitl shemetada yediyah. So he says, you don't know anything, but you do. when your bottle mitzad chokhmah, there's a lichtigkeit in it. It's something is being made to you, and you are aware of what you're bottled to. You maybe can't tell everybody with all the details about it, but you can't not tell anybody either. You can't say, I can't tell you anything, I don't know anything. You do, and you're aware. So it's a bittul which is mitzad awareness, but it's an amazing awareness. It's like a, how do you call it, a getlacha awareness, a divine awareness, and that's chokhmah. So come to this, when you are involved in a bittul mitzad chokhmah, to a certain extent you know what you're doing. How do you call it? You're a guided bottle. Yes. A bittul shemchai is a bittul shemitzad hayediyah. Dimi yoish is a bittul amiti. It's emes a bittul. Lefisha ain't a bittul shemitzad hasoga. Oh, you see, I've been telling you the whole time that yediyah doesn't mean hasoga. Shehu bittul hayesh bilvad. When you know really what you're doing, you're just hayesh. Sharei hasoga hi b'chinas matzias delakos. V'yaveda deroiva neshomas ba'soga v'izbonas belakos. Shali deiseh hi yitzia mina yeshes. Maximum you get out of yeshes with the mit. Yeah, in other words. Huh?
We're in the previous mind, but in Lati, Hasakas Mahus.
Yeah, yeah. Another Yeshomiti. Yeah. He said, "The Beheda Avoda Hariyunim Shach Achrei Achum Yisvayis." It's amazing. In Vadarov Hashav, it's a how do you call it? It's not an easy game. He always shows you that if you're not involved in Avoda. I looked up the other day. Somebody told me about a lashon that occurs in Takin this year in Tov Reish Samtet. We're finishing now. Tov Reish Samtet. I know it's a bit heavy. Tov Reish Samtet. It's too cold. I'm saying, yeah. I'll just hold out another minute. I say Tov Reish Samtet. And over there, the Rebbe Shab goes with this amazing whole long, beautiful, mind-boggling. It's one of the sikhs over there. And all of a sudden he said, alles, die Schatze, die was vernehmen sich mit Aveda. He said, he said, wegen die was vernehmen sich clownish mit Aveda, redt man clownish. He said, but those who are not busy with Aveda at all, we're not even talking. So I mean, in those days it was, it was heavy going. It was really, you had to toe, you had to toe a certain line. In order to be, however, the Rebbe says here, if you're involved in a way different road in the Shomas, at least you get out of yeshes. I mean, you haven't got terribly high, but at least you got out of yeshes. He said, but if you don't have a way to beklau, then you just nimm so hachum is wer. ועל ידי הווידה נעשה ביטל היש, שנעשה בחידס קירוב ללכוס וחופץ בלכוס. So that's all a soga. Yeah? You feel yourself near. Why? Because you want to know about Elikos. You want to be involved. But that's all you. That's Bina. He said, "Va'bitl te chokhmah li yesh zo b'chinas riyas mahus Elikos." Now here, Shalom Aleichem. This is only a shinoi aloshen. Up to now, I've been saying yediyah, and now he says, the riyas mahus Elikos harezeh b'chinas bitl amiti. ומכל מוקים, הרי זה ביטל שמצד הידיעה דווקא. The saying from yediyah, what sort of yediyah? The yediyah that comes by way of ruyas hama. In other words, something you have got out of the deal. It's a tremendously high inyan, but you have become more illuminated and aware of the whole inyan. In bittul shelamayla mitam v'das legarme atalo yedeh klum. Mitzad the etzim giving away of yourself, maybe that's got a mila. Over here, you know exactly what you're doing, even though in a way you don't really, but you do, because you, as it were, you almost see it. And since you almost see it, then you know very well what you're doing, and you're illuminated, and you, nonetheless, you're bottled be'etzim mahu shelcha, not just because you would like to be it. You are in it. Now, there's a famous spear. Zeh Keli v'an vehu. If Zeh Keli, if you really come to know about Elikos, Aniva hu, an vehu, makes the two words, Aniva Ani v'hu. The bittul hu between us ani v'hu chad. I and him become one. In other words, zeh keli. If you have gilei elikus alidei, emes awareness of elikus, v'an v'hu ani v'hu. You and the Eibush will become one. And you know the first part of it. The first part of it says, or if you say Elokai Avi, if you say, oh yes, because the Eibush is my father's, and I just have, I have a certain amuna because it comes from my forefather, then it's Arim Amenu, then you send him up into the heights. Or if you say, Zeh Keili, or this is mine, I've taken that into my life. Avian Vei, who, Aniva who, Bechinus Chad. And remember, those are the guys. Is what are we going to do?
Sure.
We got to bring Mashiach, guys. We got to bring him.
We're going to make a hackle.
It's got to happen before Mamish. It's got to happen before Mamish. It's got to be. I can tell a story now, but I haven't got any koyach. I can tell you. Just very brief. I take on myself a little bit. The whole story. I get these little things. I've got a little card that's written on it about the Shin Kotes. The quote from. Doesn't say anything about Chabad. Doesn't say Tzach or this or whatever. Yichadinah doesn't say. It doesn't say anything. Just a little white thing. This was Shin Kotes written on it, and saying what do we do? Why are we looking after ourselves? That's what he said. So I go into the mikveh and I spread it around the place where it's mutar. I wanted to put it. I put it here, I put it there, I put it in another place. And I know the people read it because I find it in different places. I come into the mikveh and it's all around the place. But they can't throw it away because it's just a quote from the Shulchan Aruch. Well, they're scared to throw it into the rubbish tin. So I write on a little sort of heoras, a little sort of pirushim. So one day I put it in without heoras. I just didn't have any time. I was 2 minutes, sorry. I put it in, I didn't write any heoras on it. So I get it back, and it's written Shtusim B'Havolim in big letters. This is Shtusim B'Havolim. I had to quote from the Shulchan Aruch. What's for Shtusim B'Havolim? He said, Kol Zman. It was like one of their big machas apparently. He said, Kol Zman she'onu b'golus, anu chayovim lehichon al hagoy. כך הוא כותב. אנחנו חייבים להיכון על הגוי, ואי אפשר לנו לעשות מאומה, מייסר מזה, or something like that. And a whole big reference, we're fafal, we're just in Golas, and that's it. So I took that card, and I put underneath the word, the shtusim, put a kav, and I put it down, and I sort of fitted it into the bottom so you wouldn't have to turn it over. I fitted it upon, I wrote shtusim with a tremendous big question mark, a big exclamation mark. I said, how is it divrei habeis Yosef, the shtusim? And then I wrote that Harei halacha zu noheges b'kol hazmanim, v'afilu b'chutz ha'aretz, v'afilu b'zman ha'golos. V'adrab habeis Yosef lo asak b'inyan, he wrote b'zman ha'golos. You do it. Habeis Yosef didn't write the halacha when the Beis Hamikdash is gone. V'harei zeh din b'pikuach nefesh b'chilchot Shabbat. The Loma Misalmim, and I put a big question mark. So I came on the Sunday morning, and I found that was laying over in another corner. So somebody chucked it away over there. And there was people who looked at it and read it. And so, but you can't do that. If somebody shows you an argument, you can't say, shtusim v'avolim. That's negative all the klalim. You can't do that. If somebody shows you and only quotes you a certain thing, then you've got to say why you don't agree with it. But he didn't say anything. He didn't be mityaches to the whole halacha b'klal. He just said kol zman shanu b'golos anu chayvim lehichon al hagoy. That's all. That's all they know. They don't even read it. They don't even look into it. So we've got to educate these people. We've got to get at them and just turn their minds for a little bit. And we've got to do it because we got to. The world's got to be. The Rebbe said, Kabbalah's name shit. We got to just somehow or another just alter this little tap. Got to just turn the tap that people should start thinking in the way they go. And that's about Purush Halacha. I can tell you all sorts of that I know in history when Yidden did try to do that. And the reason they didn't do it in the Maaseh Tzlav or something like that Why didn't they go out with, I mean, you're talking about something about 2 million soldiers or something attacked the whole of Europe. And just squashed the whole of Europe, including all the Yidden. I wouldn't have helped the poor Yidden to go out with a couple of swords or a couple of hand knives or something and fight these guys. Yeah. Oh, but nowadays the Tzionim have got all the neshek in the world. They have everything. And this Ovadia Yosef and all these guys are all sitting there raking in the money. From where? From the Tzionis, from the Medina HaTzionias. And they have tremendous power over them. So just, instead of raking in the money, just say to them, listen, this is a din show. You be Mekayim that for us. Yeah, we'll support your government, we'll give everything you want. Just take your neshek and put these guys out of order. You know? Because instead of giving them everything, just do the Eipa. And they don't want to do it. And so their mamti tell us we can't do it because we're in the gutter. Do you realize? This is